Things like having consistent taxonomies as much as you possibly can helps your marketing measurement. What does that mean? It means if you're advertising on YouTube and you're running branding, and maybe branding on YouTube is the same conceptually to your company as what you're calling prospecting on Facebook, well, those are two different terminologies. And even that little difference, which again seems pretty simple and not that big of a deal, makes it harder to measure your marketing. You need to know that prospecting equals branding equals upper funnel. So the better taxonomy you can have in an organization, the more it'll save you so many headaches downstream from there.
I'm thrilled today to have our guest, Ron Jacobson, on the show. Ron joins us as co-founder and CEO at Rockerbox. Ron, do you want to introduce yourself and say hello?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for having me on the podcast, Jason. I'm Ron Jacobson, co-founder and CEO of Rockerbox, as you mentioned. Rockerbox is a leading marketing measurement and attribution platform, providing both a data infrastructure for marketing measurement and then various types of analysis on top of that across media mix modeling, multi-touch attribution, in-platform optimization, benchmarks, and surveys. We work with brands like WeightWatchers, Burton Snowboards, Staples, to be their full-stack marketing measurement across all their marketing, paid, organic, digital, and offline.
Cool. So thanks for that, Ron. And Ron, we've known each other for over the years. We were catching up before the show here, and just talking about how the climate has changed, really just materially over the last 12 and 18 months. As a customer data platform at Simon Data, we watch attribution models closely as a way of baselining and understanding the value we drive, and our customers use it as a way of really understanding what's working and what's not. And prior to a couple of years ago, multi-touch attribution tools were an important instrument to help drive strategy. And really what I've seen in the market and given through the changes around pressure and profitability is every dollar today counts more than ever. And it's very easy to double down on bottom of the funnel, last click attribution modeling, but the famous advertising adage in that, that half your marketing is working, but you only know which half is working, the other half, you don't know which half isn't. And ultimately, the dream and the hope and, what, multi-touch attribution modeling can deliver, and deeper insights can deliver to that effect, is just an understanding of what's actually driving outcomes for your business. And that's what we'll be talking about. So today's big question really evolves, and ends with that, big question around, what's driving outcomes, but really focuses on some of the brass tacks of the how. Complicating everything around the macro is some real changes around, third-party cookies and cookie deprecations that are happening in the Chrome browser and already happen in Firefox and others. And today we'll be talking about, and focusing a lot around the how, around, how a first-party data strategy, whether you have a cloud data warehouse like Snowflake or BigQuery or whatnot, is really evolving as a central and focal component to effectively model attribution and to really understand causality at the end of the day. So Ron, before we dive into brass tacks of changes in the cookie landscape, anything to add to my preamble there?
No, I mean, I think you nailed a lot of it. The landscape has changed a lot in the past couple of years. I think after Q2 22, once interest rates started going up, the playing field was completely changed forever. I think we went from a world of marketers spending dollars and trying to figure out what net new channel they could test into, expanding into linear TV and CTV and direct mail and just trying to find more and more places to spend. And then there was a drastic U-turn. We went from spend at all costs and grow at all costs to every marketing dollar has to be driving a return. And in many ways, that was a return to kind of the tried and tested channels, Facebook and Google. Seems like whenever things get tough, dollars flow back there. But I honestly think it was a couple other changes as well. One, I think it just forced a lot of companies to put more rigor into how they measure, how they get the data that they need to measure, and how they act on that data. I think it also just put a lot more rigor on making sure that they have the ability to justify their spend. When they're spending dollars, knowing that they're going to be able to present to their board and explain why that last dollar in actually generated more than a dollar out. All this is obviously then being done within the landscape of cookie deprecation. So everyone's trying to figure out how, what data do I need to be successful moving forward? What's the right way to measure moving forward? So just like a big sea change in the past 2 years. It's been a fun time for both of our businesses.
No, that's super interesting context there. Yeah, so maybe we can get right into what old world looked like. Maybe we can just talk about how third-party cookies historically have played a role in attribution modeling, and then talk about how their deprecation is necessitating change.
Definitely. I mean, I think we should step back even like 5, 10 years ago. 10 years ago, it was a very different kind of world. And candidly, everything was just last click attribution. Most companies were using a Google Analytics. That was like the place you could go and measure most of your marketing. You kind of had like a V1 of attribution vendors that arose in the mid 2010s. Most of them have been acquired, but these were really riding the wave of programmatic advertising. And I think that's important because that was really where the concept of a third-party cookie became so important. Essentially, if you're serving an ad as a marketer on New York Times and someone's seeing that ad, that could be branding ad for your new product launch. Maybe they don't click on that ad, but a couple of days later they arrive on your website. Bridging that gap between that ad that got served in the New York Times and the actual conversion that happened was difficult. And that's exactly where third-party cookies played a role. Still very much a last-click methodology for the most part, but at least being able to say, hey, somebody saw an ad here, somebody got retargeted an ad here, and then eventually came to my website and converted. Again, very much starting from a programmatic advertising lens, and programmatic advertising lends itself very much to third-party cookies. As we fast forward today, a couple changes have been. One, people are advertising on more channels than ever. It's not just programmatic. In fact, the majority of dollars go on paid social and paid search. A lot of money is going into channels like TV and even mail and radio and podcasts and influencers. So it's just the breadth of channels has expanded quite a lot. And I think that's actually really important because as you think about it, most of those channels actually have no relation to third-party cookies. There's no way to track the fact that you saw an ad on TV with a cookie. There's no way to track the fact that you heard an ad on the radio with a cookie. So we talk a lot about third-party cookies, and there's a lot of fear-mongering about how the death of third-party cookies means measurement is gone. I actually think it means that we're just going to have to be smarter about how we measure. And frankly, I think measurement starting from a foundation of third-party cookies was kind of like the original sin of marketing attribution. It was like a faulty foundation that we tried to kind of jerry-rig around to get other channels to fit into that paradigm. Again, how do you fit linear TV into a paradigm of third-party cookies? It doesn't really make sense. Where this leads us to today is one where the best advertisers are using a lot of first-party data to try to connect the dots. I think direct mail is the simplest example. If you're able to know the physical mailing address of your customers, it's pretty easy to know, did I send mail to that physical mailing address? And that's a really nice deterministic one-to-one way to connect marketing exposure to website visit or email registration or conversion. That's high fidelity. It's future-proof. It has nothing to do with third-party cookies. And that's really where I see most marketers trying to invest a lot of their dollars in, at least in the user level form of attribution. There are other types of measurement that go beyond user level, but using first-party data as much as possible to connect all the marketing touch points leads to, frankly, a much better foundation for marketing measurement.
Yeah, no, it's a great observation, because again, going back 10 years ago, in a digital world, retargeting was, the beginning and the end. And the world has evolved significantly. And, in some sense, the deprecation of third-party cookies makes retargeting measurement harder.
Yes.
But it also is a forcing function to look at retargeting in the context of everything else that you might be doing. A first-party data strategy, which we'll get to now, really requires brands to think holistically around all the touch points that they're pushing through to their customers across connected television, across offline, across owned channels, and then of course into paid as well. So with this, let's talk about the new world. And I don't know, Ron, maybe if you want to draw from some examples you've seen from a customer, or whatever reference architecture might look like for you all at Rockerbox. But what does great look like? And for listeners who have some support from their data team and some degree of tooling, how do they go from something to today that might be acceptable or south of that, to establishing a North Star, which can potentially one day be great?
Yeah, that's a good question. It starts with the basics, and this is not like sexy things to say, but things like having consistent taxonomies as much as you possibly can helps your marketing measurement. What does that mean? It means if you're advertising on YouTube and you're running branding, and maybe branding on YouTube is the same conceptually to your company as what you're calling prospecting on Facebook. Well, those are two different terminologies. And even that little difference, which again seems pretty simple and not that big of a deal, makes it harder to measure your marketing. You need to know that prospecting equals branding equals upper funnel. So the better taxonomy you can have in an organization, the more it'll save you so many headaches downstream from there. Otherwise, I really think it just depends on where you are organizationally in terms of your kind of marketing maturity. I think if you're on very few marketing channels, candidly, using Google Analytics can still be a sufficient solution. I generally say if you're on Facebook, Google, and that makes up 90% plus of your budget, is it perfect using Google Analytics? Absolutely not. But is it still, you can put your finger on your pulse and kind of know what's working? I fundamentally believe so. I'd say the moment you're beyond 5 marketing channels, the moment none of those marketing channels makes up, 60, 70% of your ad spend, is really when and there's a certain level of spend that if you're above it also just makes pure sense. You're doing yourself a disservice and not have an actual measurement solution or a measurement strategy in place. To me, it starts with the data, the underlying data foundation that you have. You need either to find a way to manage this yourself, work with companies like Rockerbox, work with other ETL companies, but you want to make sure that you have all of your marketing data centralized. That includes both marketing spend data. Every single dollar you spend, you're going to need somewhere centralized, such that you can calculate CPA and ROAS. You're going to need all of the performance from the ad platforms themselves. You want to know what did Meta say I drove yesterday, so you can compare how they self-report themselves to how that looks from a third-party measurement solution. You're going to want to construct a path to conversion, so you can understand every single marketing touch point to let a user to convert. Once you have that data foundation, then the best companies are trying to figure out what type of measurement should I be using. At scale, our largest customers all end up using multiple types of measurement. They're using media mix modeling, they're using multi-touch attribution, they're using surveys, they're using benchmarks, because fundamentally every single type of marketing measurement, and it's funny that I'm saying this because I run a measurement company, but every type of measurement is flawed. Nothing is perfect. I think the best companies recognize that and they instead ask, okay, given everything is flawed, what are the right questions? Or rather, what are the right answers to be getting from media mix modeling versus MTA versus surveys? And that could be budgeting versus channel overlap versus qualitative feedback. So they're just different questions that can be answered by all these types of measurement, and the best companies are all using all these different types. Lastly, they're pumping the results back into their warehouse. They're making sure that all the data that they have from their third-party vendors are housed in Snowflake, BigQuery, Redshift, you name it, such that they can act on that as well. I'd say that last part's really, really, really important. You need your marketing data and your marketing measurement to be right where your team is operating. And if they're siloed from each other, it's just going to be, it's just not good.
No, that's definitely preaching to the choir from Simon data thesis perspective. But let me sort of pick up on something you said there, which I think is really brings us to our next point, which is the so what. And I think there's certainly a so what around media mix modeling as an example around we had a good quarter last Q1. We're in Q2 now. How do we allocate our budgets? And this is the new allocation mix we're using. And I think ultimately justifying spend and where I kicked off around making sure that every dollar you put in has outsized return in this macro is critical. But there's another side to all this that has operational implications. Maybe you can talk through that, what that means from both an analytical and activation context, and we can maybe also talk about some of the things that Simon does on the backside of all this.
Yeah, the so what is the right question to be asking, and I think a lot of companies get into marketing measurement without really knowing what they're trying to get out of it. They kind of come and just say, hey, my attribution isn't good. I need to fix my attribution. And I would say if that's kind of where you're at, I'd pause and just dive a bit deeper. What's not good about your attribution? Is it that you think you're missing certain marketing channels? An example could be I use Google Analytics and I don't see my TV my TV ads in Google Analytics. That's a gap. So that could be an actual what's the problem. Another problem could be I don't know how to actually make a budget for the next quarter. So I think it's really important just to make sure you understand what you're trying to solve, so that you can actually get the so what answered. But for a lot of our customers, particularly these days, you're right. using historical data to come up with next quarter's budget is standard. If anything, now it's probably more using last month's budget to come up with next month's budget, or even last week's performance to use next week's. We're definitely seeing an acceleration in kind of the speed at which companies are continually reevaluating their media mix. But that's important because, frankly, I think the world is just changing at a pace where you can't take what happened last quarter as actually having a guaranteed impact on your performance today. Operationalizing that is really, really hard. And it goes across the entire spectrum of what question am I looking to ask? How do I get the data? How do I kind of gather insight or learnings from that data? And then how do I act on it? And it's really that 4-step process that if you're not doing all 4 steps, it's almost, I wouldn't say it's better to do none, but if you're not doing all 4 steps, it's kind of very much going to lead to that so what problem. A lot of companies don't know what question to ask. A lot of the times they do know, but they don't have the data. They don't actually want to make insight on top of it, and they're not acting on it. So I would say the best companies operationally are really, really rigorous in that process. They have recurring frameworks by which on a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly basis, they know what questions they're asking and they know what actions they're taking on top of it. And that it really depends though on the business context. Is your goal to grow top line? Is it to grow profitability? Is it to get back in front of existing customers because you find you have a higher gross margin there? That comes back again to like, what's the actual question? Fundamentally though, marketing measurement providers should help you figure out for that given question, which channels, which tactics are performing best there. And then you're either going to want to double down on those until they're no longer incremental, or you need to test new strategies there to try to figure out, is there something net new I could be doing there? If there's answers no to both of those, it's okay, what's my next best option to try to hit this goal of mine? And that's where activation becomes really, really important, and having really good tools and technologies that can help you activate is just key.
Yeah, 100%. And putting sort of my Simon Data hat on, a critical question to ask is okay. You push out a campaign, whether it be through last click attribution or some more sophisticated way of modeling, you identify that maybe it's not working so well. But the question to ask is there a subset within the cohort in the campaign where it worked really well? And for everyone else who's not in that subset, is there a different strategy that you can employ, through different creative, different channels, whatever it might be, to more appropriately, effectively target those folks. Really breaking these things down apart. Obviously, the process of developing your marketing program and campaign is not one of whiteboarding in a back office in a yearly planning exercise, but one of being iterative and agile, trying things out and seeing what works. And there's a very standard campaign development life cycle where you deploy something and either it's a total bust, it's a clear win, or somewhere in between, which is the majority of the time. And then if it's somewhere in between, asking what are the points of leverage to optimize it, and you can go back and optimize it wholesale, or you can take a more personalized, nuanced and segmented approach. And break down the audience and run the attribution modeling again over 2 subsets of or more subsets of the recipients of the campaign, and then from there develop a perspective around what needs to happen to better activate the folks who weren't as effective. And I think really the interplay between the two is ultimately the 2 steps required to execute against your marketing strategy. So start with something which involves some basic insights on your customers with a creative perspective on how to engage them, and then with analytical rigor identify what worked and what didn't, and then iterate the whole process again.
Yeah, and I mean I think that's easier said than done, right? A lot of companies believe that they have the capacity to do that, and they might be missing it both from a technical perspective, which is where they need the right providers, but also I think just like, do they have the right people and do they have the right operational framework? So I've seen a lot of companies want to get there and struggle. So it's something we think a lot about at Rockerbox is how can we help them? How can we help them understand not just, okay, this is my data, but how do I think about that campaign structure or that subsegment of users that actually are highly performant that I can go after? Something I'd be curious to hear from you a little about, but an area that a lot of our customers come to us on is they're investing in a channel where, like maybe Pinterest or something, and they feel like Pinterest is a great channel because it's very visual and people are really seeing their ads, but they're not converting, they're not clicking through. So it's sort of like this gap in data where they know people are seeing ads on Pinterest, but they might not originally have had that data into their warehouse. Fortunately, like a Rockerbox, that's the sort of connection we're able to make, But I also think that's a really cool opportunity for activation, which is suddenly, hey, these folks who came to our site direct before, now we know they actually viewed it on Pinterest. How am I going to re-engage them in a different way because I have that data? And I think that's really where the connection between marketing measurement companies that can do a really good job at trying to construct a really robust path to conversion and having the ability to act on those subsegments of users becomes really powerful.
Yeah, 100%. And I think the guidance I always give to our customers is expect more from your MarTech vendors, in bringing data back into your ecosystem. And if you're pushing data to Pinterest, do everything you can to make sure that the engagement on the back of that is captured in a way, whether it's fed back into GA or back into your Snowflake, your cloud data warehouse environment. Because guess what? If the data isn't there, then it doesn't matter how smart your attribution modeling is or how good your activation is. And really just think about the roles and responsibilities across the tools you have and the team and the resources you have as well from a data perspective to make sure that you have all the right data in place. Because I think the other tendency, which I'm not going to try to go on too much of a tangent, but it's always good to remember that every one of your big ad channels has huge biases in terms of how they want you to buy ads. Google just wants you to live bottom of the funnel no matter what they say, because that's where search is best and that's where they make their money. So data gaps will exist pervasively across that, just given the way these ecosystems have evolved. And you just really need to think like a customer. Last time you saw a billboard, last time you saw an ad when you were watching something on Hulu, how do you respond? And how did it keep something top of mind? I mean, these are your customers. And the data that you collect needs to reflect what you believe is the experience that your customers are going through.
100%. Yeah. I mean, I like that line, expect more from your MarTech vendors is very true. If you're pushing data for them, you need to get it back out, don't you?
Great. All righty. So we are approaching the end, the bottom of the show here, Ron. Bonus question for you. If you were to have this conversation again around multi-touch attribution modeling and changes to the data landscape with anyone else, again, outside of me, who would that be and why?
I'd say anybody who's using last click attribution in Google Analytics, I'd love to talk to. If you're stuck in that world, especially with the changes with the new version of GA that rolled out, we should definitely be talking. I can help you better measure your marketing.
Yep, no, that's it's a great response. I think I saw an April Fool's Day joke, by I think someone who's the marketing measurement expert at Power Digital. He's a little bit of a LinkedIn celebrity around how he's advising everyone to double down on last click attribution for everything and put all dollars into what's easily measurable.
Hey, that's really good for Google's stock. That branded SEM is going to get a lot of your ad dollars if that's the case.
Yeah, let's call it to Ben Dutter. That's his name. Ben's great.
Yeah.
Awesome. So, so Ron, first, thank you for coming on the podcast today and sharing your wisdom with us. Really recap of the episode. If you're not thinking holistically around what's driving customer actions, then now is the time to start. Ultimately, expectations from the market are looking at dollars in and dollars out. And that is a cold hard fact that just can't be avoided. Every one of these models are just that. They're guesses around how the world actually works. And really, as a CMO or anyone working in analytical marketing capacities, the question you always need to be asking is, how am I putting my dollars to use? How am I putting my resources to use? And how are I making sure that the 7 or 8 figures or more of a budget or less for smaller customers, obviously, is driving 3x, 4x, 5x return on that investment and beyond. And that's the question that I know everyone listening is asking every day. But really, for me, the big takeaway is just stepping outside of what you've been doing for the last 5 years. And looking at your business from the outside through the lens of a customer, through the lens of what is actually influencing behavior is just absolutely critical, especially, during this time. And then, of course, with this, the tactics and the tools and the techniques and the technology that's available, required, and being regulated away in some cases, is changing materially. So, really now is the time to double down on this. So Ron, so anyone who wants to learn more about Rockerbox, how can they find you or Rockerbox?
Yeah, I mean, rockerbox.com, obviously, but also ron@rockerbox.com. Feel free to reach out directly. Happy to talk.
Great. And thank you to everyone listening to this episode of the Data Unlocked podcast. If you'd like to learn more about Simon Data, please visit us on the web at simondata.com or email us at hello@simondata.